Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to sing a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like today's show, check out our Patreon, Opperman Report Patreon. We just started it up, just set it up. Haven't even uploaded any new shows to that yet. There, but by the time you hear this, it should be up and running 100%. Our archives are always free. You go to Spreaker.com, you find our archives there, about 1,700 hours worth of shows. And if you sign up there for free, you get an email notification anytime we put up new content. And I also do an exclusive live show there every Friday evening at 10 p.m. Spreaker.com. Our guest today is an expert witness when it comes to coercive interrogation. His website is coerciveinterrogationexpert.com, and his name is Brian Leslie. Brian Leslie, are you there?
Hey, Brian. How are you?
Thank you so much for coming on the show. So tell the audience, who is Brian Leslie?
Well, I'm a former chief of police. I've 15 years of police experience. I started about 9 years ago as an expert in the courts. My expertise is interrogation, interviewing. I started my career when I was quite young, but one of the things that I did during my career was I was really focused on how witnesses present themselves and the information that witnesses provide. It was always a problem for me, so as time went on, I started seeing some flaws in the witness situation, taking witness statements from witnesses, and so I created a methodology called reaction analysis profiling. The purpose of that was to basically start to read body language in the interviews of witnesses and starting to understand a little bit more about why they provide flawed information and understanding the best ways to get information from witnesses that was more vetted. So as time went on, I tested that methodology over time, and I used it through most of my career. And now I've done over 2,000 interviews and interrogations in my time. I've handled primarily major felony cases, mostly homicide, sex offense cases. That's primarily what I do. I'm retained a lot by the public defender's office, federal, state, and military, and I basically work with them throughout. That's what I do right now full time.
So just so I understand, that this methodology you created was to obtain more accurate witness statements by observing body language. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. And the issue really became that the point of a witness was to provide information in an investigation. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit about what that simply means. There's two types of investigations, inductive, deductive. A deductive method of investigation simply means that if you are conducting a deductive method of investigation, you're only looking at inculpatory evidence. That's evidence that is for the government. So when you're going out looking for just the evidence that you want to gain to provide evidence for a case, but you're not looking at exculpatory evidence, which would be for the defense, that means that you're doing a deductive method, and therefore it's flawed in its form, and therefore you're not allowing all evidence to be accepted. Whereas the inductive method simply means that you accept all information, you vet the information, you vet the source of the information and the information that was provided, and you corroborate that information, and therefore you draw inferences, and based on those inferences you then draw what's known as a reasonable conclusion. That's an inductive method. So the inductive versus deductive method, if you're creating a deductive method of investigation and you're taking witness statements, you're going to use the same types of coercive techniques that are used in interrogation to a certain degree, not a full outright, but there's other ones that you use where you're starting to then vet witnesses in a way that you're using such things, for example, as word integration, narrative traps. These are things that you're going to use in an interview with a witness that you want them to come on board to your way of thinking or to your narrative that you wanted to create for the court. Therefore, the witness, because perhaps the witness has some vulnerabilities as well, will come over to your side and provide you only the information that you want to hear, not the information that's all fact. And that's how you go down that very destructive road of targeting the wrong person, the wrong individual.
Now, I'm curious, what body language signs did you observe, and how did this? What was it? What was your conclusion, that they were making things up, or they were being intimidated? Explain.
Okay, the methodology kind of works like this. So what you have to do is, most people think that body language simply means that you look at somebody. If they look up to the right, it means this. If it looks down to the left, it means that. That's not true at all. What happens, and I've proven this many, many times over, what happens is body language is like DNA. It's unique to the individual. So you have to establish what's known as the tells, the baseline tells. So when you go in and you're first going to interview an individual, you have to get a baseline. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask in a pre-interview or a pre-question, you're going to ask 5 questions that you know they're going to answer the truth. You're going to ask 5 questions that are subjective, which means they're going to partially answer truth. And these are usually embarrassing types of questions where they don't want to give you a lot of detail. Then you ask 3 questions that you know are they're going to lie about. And in those questions, you establish the baseline. And then when you're asking these questions, you're looking at 3 points in the individual. You're looking at their mouth, and in the beginning of the question, in the middle, and at the end. You're looking at their eyes in the beginning and the middle and the end, and you're looking at the head tilt in the beginning and the middle at the end. Now, I've done a lot of research into this over time, and what you'll find, and in fact, a book called Visual Liar, which I have out, which actually demonstrates this exact phenomenon, is that basically what happens when you take, and I did one case where I had somebody interview an individual. It was not a case per se, it was just basically some research. And they asked 45 questions from an individual, 3 different individuals. What I did with those is, once the video had been completed, I didn't have anything to do with the actual interview. I then looked at each question. I took snapshots at the beginning, middle, and end of questions that were very similar of each individual. You would find that when you place and you print the headshots out, you'd find that if you place them side by side, they're identical. And that's in my book. I actually have the pictures of it in my book, Visual Liar. So you can see that is, and as a chief of police, I tested it against polygraph, and it stood up even beyond polygraph. So that's how that works.
Oh, fast! I'm gonna have to get a copy of that book, man, Visual Liar, and check this out. This is right up my alley. Now, I'm assuming, because you're an expert witness, that the majority of your clients are defendants.
That's correct, yes.
All right. Now, can you ever think of an occasion where you would advise someone who's a suspect in a case to have any kind of interrogation with the police without an attorney?
Well, at no time should you ever be interrogating or should be going into any kind of an interview with the police without consulting your attorney, of course. But that's not the case.
Right. Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think the average person thinks that they can go in there and kind of talk their way out of it?
Well, because and I get this from attorneys all the time. The attorney will say to me, I can't imagine why my client would go in after I told him, don't talk to the police. And he'd go in and he'd talk to the police and he'd end up giving them a confession. And I'd say, look, first of all, you don't understand something about that. The fact of the matter is, most people want to go in and they believe they have nothing to hide, especially if they didn't do anything. They believe they have nothing to hide. And so they believe by going into the police, they can clear themselves faster by trying to explain certain circumstances. But what they don't realize is police interrogation techniques will turn it around, and they'll use specific coercive methods to get what they want out of it. And it's not, you got to remember the difference between an interview and an interrogation. An interview is fact-finding. It's done in the pre-interrogation phase. And what happens is it's during the investigation phase. So they're looking for facts, they're looking for information. An interrogation, you got to look at an interrogation, is like a cake. Once you've done your investigation, you have the presumption of guilt to go into the interrogation. If you don't have that presumption of guilt, you shouldn't be interrogating anybody, which happens quite often, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But one of the things that you look at it like a cake. If you try to put icing on a cake that's not baked, it's just going to fall through. It's going to sink into the cake. So if you haven't baked the cake, why are you putting the icing on it. That's the same thing with an interrogation. Because, and you'll notice in interrogations, that when an interrogation is not completed, when the investigation is flawed in any way, shape, or form, and the person is maintaining their innocence during that interrogation, the interrogator will always refer back to, I need to hear the truth. No, you don't need to hear the truth. You need to hear your truth because you did a bad investigation. That's what you need to hear. But what you're going to get is their denial of what exactly you're accusing them of because you didn't do your job. You didn't do the investigation you were supposed to do, period. You did a deductive method of investigation. You used your preconceived notions or your preconceived disposition. When you went into it, you already had decided views of who the target was and why that person was targeted in the first place. And I'm going to add to that because I've written an article, and you can find it online. I've even actually got a website for it. The dominant witness theory. I wrote that article a few years ago. It's used a lot now in courts. And the dominant witness theory simply means this. When you go to a multi-witness event as a police officer, what is the first thing that you should be asking a witness in a multi-witness event? Most people will say, well, what did you see? No, the first question you should be asking is, who did you speak to before I arrived? Because the dominant witness in any multi-witness event will feed information to the other witnesses and embarrass them to a certain degree. And they'll convince them, they'll basically integrate narrative into their version of events. Oh, the car was black. No, it wasn't. It was blue. I saw it was blue. So they'll then bring them on board. So what I used to do when I was a police officer, I'd go to these events, and I would take these individuals, and I'd say, look, I'd separate them. I'd say, look, you told me the car was blue. You had a conversation, I know before I got here, with the other witnesses. And I know you're saying it's blue now, but here, I'd like you to tell me something. What did you really think it was before you talked to the other witnesses? I mean, I want to hear. You don't have to be embarrassed about it because you may be the right one. And they'd say, yeah, I thought it was a kind of a dark purple. Really? Okay. That's good because that helps me. So you're getting purple, you're getting blue. Now you're getting different variations. And the same thing goes with a tattoo. I actually did a lot of research into this particular phenomenon. I did about 30 interviews with about 30 different people in a room. And here's exactly to prove my point. What I did was, I would, first of all, I put 3 suspect photos on the overhead. Now, they're there for 15, 20 minutes while people were going in the room. They're sitting down, they're talking amongst the people that are there. I bring them in for a different reason, not for this purpose. I bring them in if they think they're going to be getting some information on something else. And I'll just put it up there. Then what I will do is I'll come in about 20 minutes later and I'll take it off the overhead. And they'll say, and then I'll say to them, now, how many people here? And I bet you, and what I'll do is I'll appeal to their egos. And I'll say, look, how many here? I bet you guys are amazing in recall. And everybody goes, everybody wants to be that person. How many here think they're the best in recall? Oh, hands will go up all over the place. And I'll say, I bet you, though, none of you saw the tattoo on suspect number 2's lower side neck in a hexagon shape. And I say, oh, just a sec, I got a phone call, and I'll leave for about 10 minutes. I'll listen to them talk amongst each other. You see and listen to how many of them are arguing and embedding information into others and belittling them to make them think that they didn't see what they saw. And by the time I come back, 15 people will be able to tell you they saw that tattoo. Then I'll go further and I'll talk about something else for about 10, 15 minutes. I'll say, you know what, you guys amaze me. I've never seen anybody that incredible at coming back with information, but I bet you never saw the 2 dots in the middle of the tattoo with whatever, and I'll be more descriptive about what's inside of it. And I said, but I bet you none of you can remember that. Think about it for a minute. I'll just go be back in about 5 minutes, and I'll leave, and I'll listen to them talking again. And somebody will say, yeah, I saw it. And then other people say, well, no, I saw it. It was not 2 dots. It was 3 dots. And so they'll integrate that narrative in other people in the room. I'll come back in, and at least 30% of them will be able to tell you not only that it was on his neck where it was on his neck, exactly the description on his neck, what exactly it looked like, and they'll all be on board with it. And then at the end of the session, I'll put up the 3 photos again, and there's no tattoo on any of them. And they'll actually accuse me of putting up the wrong person, that I changed it. And they will not believe that I just set this up.
Fascinating. So you're saying that witness statements, even witnesses that want to be helpful, want to cooperate with the investigation, can be manipulated and distracted, and all kinds of information inserted into their statement. Fascinating.
And is done all the time.
So then you must.
If an officer goes into an interview, for example, and he has a predisposition, he has a target of an individual that he wants to already go after for personal reasons. Perhaps maybe he's been on the street a long time. It's time this guy gets off the street. They believe he's doing this, but they never proved it. You're going to see, and when you look at, that's why when I do interrogations, and I look at interrogations when I'm given those to look at, I always look at the underlying statements first, because how you do those statements in for a witness or for an alleged victim, they're very telling of what you end up with the final product and why this guy is not admitting to anything in the interrogation, because he's the wrong guy. And because you created the narrative in these witnesses that are just going on because they want to be helpful. You can say to a witness, look, you were sleeping that night, so when they came into the room, you kind of saw him coming over to you, didn't you? Well, not really. Well, but he was close to you, right? Yes, he was close to me. So now you're only taking that in the statement.
Mr. Leslie, let me ask you something. Now, what about a situation, okay, God forbid, parents, the child goes missing, right, from the house or the park or whatever, and they're desperate. They want help from the police, but they're a suspect, you know what I mean? The cops are looking at them hanky, a lot of times for a good reason. Now, would you suggest that they go in and bare their soul to the cops, or should they go in with a lawyer?
Well, I tell you here. Okay, let me get into another area what you're kind of describing. Are you talking about the parents end up putting themselves in jeopardy?
Yeah, that the cops say, well, I suspect this parent. Hey, let me put some words in their mouth, just like you're describing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A good example of that, I'm telling you, a good example of that is, I do a lot of baby deaths too. I've done quite a few of those actually, where you have parents that the child has deceased, 2 years old, 3 years old, 1 year old, or they've been, stopped breathing and they end up with brain damage. So there's an investigation being done. One of the issues that the police will do is they'll always talk to the parents, obviously. The parents didn't do anything. They believe that they want to help as much as possible. It was their child that passed away. They want to be as helpful as possible. And in these interviews, and on several occasions, I see the same thing kind of over and over again. And different states, because I do every state. So, and in these particular cases, you end up with a situation where, like in this particular one particular case, I'll use as an example. I won't say where it was, but the individual started. Him and his wife have their own kids, and they were looking after somebody else's kids. And that particular child had a virus which didn't get disclosed to these people. And this child, who was 1 year old, 1.5 years old, started vomiting heavily. And the father was home alone and picked the child up and ran to the sink, and the child vomited in the sink. So anyway, the child ended up passing out. They had to call an ambulance. The child was in critical condition. They ended up surviving, but ended up with brain damage. So there was an investigation. Now, the first thing that was said when the parents were interviewed, the parents were brought in. The mother had to step out. She had to go get something at the store, and this occurred when she was gone. And what happened was, the first thing the officer had asked her, and it was a smaller area, so it wasn't like a large police department. It was like a department with maybe 15 officers. And the detective in that situation says to the father, so I understand, yeah, he was throwing up, and you picked him up and you ran to the sink. Well, during the time you're running, did you think you perhaps shake the child at all? Well, I guess and the father goes, well, I guess maybe I did. Well, so, but no more than 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, right? Well, I wouldn't think so. But by the time the second hour comes in, it's but no more than 10 times, right? And then it was no more than 12 or 13 times by the third hour. He was basically creating the narrative of shaken baby. That's what he was doing. And this guy had no idea. He had no idea. He was just picking the child. He was vomiting. And he ended up charged, and he did get off.
Okay. You know, you'd mentioned.
But had I not looked at that, had I not looked at that statement, that would never have got to a jury.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned earlier that you worked on a lot of high-profile cases. Have you ever looked at the confession of from the West Memphis 3 case, that kid Jesse Miskelly?
Oh, sorry. Say that one again?
Yeah, the West Memphis 3, the young man Jesse Miskelly made the confession. Everybody always says it's a false confession because he had a low IQ and he was being coerced and stuff. You never looked into that case?
Well, I don't. Quite frankly, I have my own caseload. I do probably about 5 cases a week. And I look at least at that. But what you're talking about basically vulnerabilities. Yes, low IQ is a vulnerability. Sleep deprivation is a vulnerability. There's lots of vulnerabilities. I've dealt with a case. I'll tell you one that I found was the first of its kind that I had dealt with. It was a situation where an individual he's 22 years old or so. He was arrested and charged with basically sexual assault of a child when he was a little younger. But basically what happened was he was manipulated into the investigator who was investigating the allegations against him, told him that he could come in at any time because he said, well, I was also molested by these same people, they were younger when this happened. And she said, sure, well, come in and talk to me, but you got to tell me what you got to tell me what you did first, and then I'll take your complaint. And this guy, being vulnerable, he lives on the street now. He comes in and he's really hoping that he's going to get justice for his case. So he starts basically, this individual segues into becoming a therapist for this individual, and takes a confession based on his situation, but then segues back into the other case. It was so seamless, a jury would have easily convicted him, which in fact he wasn't not guilty of this, but the fact is that how this statement was taken was totally inappropriate.
Incredibly fascinating stuff, man, but it's so discouraging too as well. So so much injustice in these cases. Does it ever become cynical? Are you becoming callous to all this?
No, actually, for myself personally, I'm more of an analyst. I look at things, I go into every case without any predisposition. I deal with some of the most heinous cases, but you have to walk into them and say, okay, before I can pass any judgment or even draw any kind of an opinion on this, I want to see evidence. And what I'm looking at is I already know where to look, because doing the job for that many and actually creating my own methodology earlier, I have a real problem with witnesses. I vet them. And a lot of people say, oh, you should never, not re-victimize the victim. Well, wait a minute. Wait a second here. Re-victimizing the victim's made an allegation and somebody's going away for the rest of their life. That's a life sentence. And yes, victims should be vetted better than they are. And you shouldn't just accept a victim's account of an event. If it meets the smell test, yes. If you have corroborating evidence and you do your job as an investigator, yes. You then go back and you can corroborate everything. But if you're doing a shoddy investigation as an investigator, and you're looking at it as a deductive method, not an inductive, then you owe it to the victim or the family of the victim to do a proper investigation. And you owe it to everybody in that whole process. Because once you get it into the court, it then goes to the prosecutor. The prosecutor then takes your word as an investigator over it, your evidence, and what you didn't bring to the table, he doesn't know. They don't know what exculpatory evidence you didn't bring to the table. Only you do. And you may not even think that that was important. You may have written it off as saying, well, it wasn't relevant, it wasn't credible. Really? Well, let me tell you something. In an inductive method, you look at everything. You weigh it, you analyze it, and you then draw inferences based on it. That's the way you do an investigation. And you need to go back to the table and do the proper investigation. I've had officers on the stand saying, when they were cross-examined by defense counsel, well, why would you have gone after this individual? I had a gut feeling. Really? So now you're now a genie? But this comes to police culture, and police culture basically lends it to believe police officers have this thing sometimes. Not all of them. I'm not going to trash police officers because a lot of them do a great job. But there's a lot that have the egos that believe that no matter what, I have a gut feeling. I've been on the streets for years. I know people inside and out, and they go with that, not evidence. And that's why they target the wrong suspects. And I know I was in that business for 15 years. I know what they're like. There's some really good ones, and there's ones that are almost rogue to a certain degree. Yeah, and you'll see this. We see that in the news all the time now.
Yeah, and every profession, everybody gets burnt out after a while too. So, but this is a good time to take a commercial break here. We're talking with Brian Leslie, and the website is coerciveinterrogationexpert.com. And check out his book too, A Visual Liar, and the other one was Dominant Witness Theory. Was that it?
Deception of a Witness.
Deception of a Witness. Great stuff. We'll be right back with more of a Brian Leslie after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We have with us today Brian Leslie, former police chief, and his website is coerciveinterrogationexpert.com. He's an expert witness traveling all over the country, giving expert testimony on coercive investigations, false witness statements, I guess, as well, right? Mr. Leslie.
Yeah. Coercive interrogation.
Yeah. Now, what about that? In the old days, you used to hear these stories about the rubber hose, right? They went back with the rubber hose and beat a confession out of somebody. You still seeing that today?
Yeah. No. What happens? Well, you do see sometimes, but what happens is that that was called the third degree, and it was replaced. It was replaced by a different technique that was more of a psychological technique back in about '74. So that shouldn't happen anymore. You do still see it from time to time. I mean, you get situations, and I still see them from time to time. But basically what you're looking at a lot of the time is you're looking at more coercive techniques that are psychological, sleep deprivation. You're looking at low IQs. You're looking at, and one of my favorite ones, which almost walks itself right into that corner, is called blackout confessions, where an individual goes into, for example, into an interrogation, and of course the first part of the interrogation is the officer or the interrogator is asking specifics about, hey, when you were younger, or he talks about when he was younger, and he talks about, oh yeah, I used to drink a lot when I was younger. How about you? Oh yeah, no, I drink quite a bit, and the officer knows that this guy is an alcoholic or perhaps a drug user, and then they'll have a great they'll bond for like a good hour. That's part of the psychological, and then he'll start suggesting that, Frank or whatever his name is, when you committed this offense, you very well might have blacked out. Is that possible? Well, I don't think so. I don't think I blacked out. Well, think about it for a minute. Is it possible, though? Well, I guess it's possible, maybe. And then by the time the third hour goes into it, yeah, definitely that's what happened. I committed this. I must have blacked out, because they minimize it. And so minimization techniques are used. And what that simply means is, look, and I see this all the time, look, murder's up here. What you did is then way down here. And it's not really down there. It's probably right under murder, but they're suggesting that it's no big deal. So if you had been drinking and you'd passed out, and who knows, you may have committed that. Isn't that correct? Isn't that something you might have done? Well, I guess. Yeah, sure. I guess I must have. Yeah, because you couldn't help yourself. When this happened, you were out of control at the time, and you drank a lot, you'd party all that, and right away the guy starts going with whatever narrative the officer wants him to. Another good example is in sexual assault cases. The issue is, Frank, all she wants you to do is she doesn't care about the sexual assault itself. She just wants you to admit that you did this and that you're sorry. And she just needs a letter from you saying that you're sorry. Maybe it's a friend or a common friend amongst many of them, and it's a consent issue. So I'll leave you in here. I'll give you a piece of paper. All I need you to do is just write a brief little message saying, look, I take full responsibility for this, and I'm sorry. And lo and behold, that's what comes out of it, because the way that the minimization is used in the technique, it minimizes the culpability in the individual's mind. And so he writes this letter. It's a confession.
And I guess sometimes they leave that interrogation room believing that they did it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It depends on the techniques that are used. I went into a case, and I'm not going to say which case, but I went into a case that had a sleep deprivation issue. Where the person was physically, while they were reading Miranda, was physically sleeping. And then the officer, right on video, says to him, "So I'll take that as a yes."
Wow. I suppose.
What's more troubling with this is that I'm getting it after he's been charged, which means the DAs have already got it. Everybody's already got it. The charges are before the court, and nobody saw this as a problem.
Did you ever go into a case where you went to the defendant and say, "Hey, man, you confessed wrong. you didn't do this crime, and we can prove it"?
I never talk to defendants.
Okay, never. Okay.
I always go through their attorneys. So I'm usually retained by the attorneys, except in post-conviction cases where I then have usually the families, because they're usually serving time at the time.
So there would never be a case where the defendant was still insisting that they did it, even though you could show the techniques were used to trick them into making a confession.
Sorry, did they admit that they did it?
Yeah, like
and
someone.
That you showed that?
Yeah, no, someone confesses, right? But now they're convinced. They falsely confess, but they're so convinced that they did it. Then when the defense comes along and says, "No, we can prove you didn't do it," they're still saying, "No, I think I did it."
Well, most of the time, yeah. And most of the time, if I'm looking at them, if I'm looking through these things, if the individual believed that he did it, and the defense is getting a hold of me, it's gone past the point of he's still believing it. Yeah, I would. They'd probably plead him on a deal, is what they would do at that point, I'm sure. But I wouldn't see it. But at that point,
what do you think the percentage is of people sitting in prison right now on false confessions?
Well, there's statistics on that, and those statistics are basically Innocence Project statistics, which are basically 25% of all the exonerations that were done through DNA. Also gave 25% of those gave false confessions. And I can tell you, my experience, and knowing what I know, and looking what I look at, there's so many tactics used. Not just, and you got to remember, it's not trial. This isn't about the trial, the people sitting in jail about trial. It's about being given an alternative to plead guilty, and you'll get this many years, or you plead guilty today and we'll give you only 5 years. It's an extortionary tactic. And it's done all the time. It's done in the plea bargaining deals. So it would never even get to me. But the fact is during my whole police career, I saw this. And we were always encouraged. I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on the prosecution. But we were always encouraged to lay more charges than not enough, because it's easier to do a deal. And I just wouldn't buy into that. I refused to. In fact, I was a rogue in that respect. I just refused to, and they'd get mad at me all the time when I was a cop. So I just refused to buy into that. Sure, for every offense there's several charges you probably could lay. For example, if you had an assault police, you'd also have a resisting, but you don't need to necessarily lay it, but you would probably lay it, only because they kind of part and parcel of their own. So that would be one way of, but there's multi-charges laid, and people, and for whatever reason now, people are entitled to an attorney. They get, their public defenders. That's great. But the fact is that when a deal's on the table and you're talked into taking a deal, and you didn't do anything, but the risk of going for further time in jail, in your mind, is no different than a coercive technique used in the interrogation room. Because the fact is, if you take it only because you don't want to take the risk on the table of getting a higher sentence, you're doing it. Perhaps you weren't guilty, but you have to allocute, obviously, and so you're allocuting before the court, and it registers a guilty plea. But I have issues with that too.
Yeah,
when it's not done properly.
I see a lot of minor cases, DUIs, paraphernalia possession, domestic violence, where they can, if they plead guilty, they can get out of jail over the weekend and go back to work the next day. They got to get to work. They got to take their kids to school and stuff like that. So they plead guilty on the first one, then they got the second one, the third one. Now they got real charges coming up. How long have you been working as an expert witness?
Just about 10 years now.
10 years now. And you said you worked on a lot of high-profile cases. Any cases we would recognize?
Sure. Yes, but I really don't want to say them because some of them are still in the courts right now.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem.
So I don't want to really, yeah.
In the last 10 years, what's the most...
I do primarily murder cases. So, I mean, the majority of my cases are murder cases and and so you can see all those are pretty much high profile, but some of them are more national than regional.
And in the last 10 years, what's the most outrageous case you've seen of a false confession or manipulated witness testimony?
Wow, there's a lot that are nose to nose. Trust me. Well, I'll say this: I have certain. I won't say which ones, but there's certain areas that have more instances that I get hired on. I mean, for example, all right, I'll kind of the most bizarre one I can say. I won't say which city it is. It was a double capital murder case. When I looked at the video probably because what I also look at is I look at the time code burns as well. So I'm looking at a lot of things. But in this particular case, almost, I'm going to say within an hour and a half of looking at this confession, I had started finding edits in the seconds on the video. By the time I finished it, which was only 2 hours later, there was 47 edits in the confession, time code burn edits, which means that it was edited on personal software, where the time code burns. No jury would have seen that because it was done on the seconds. So when words were changed to have different context, phrases were dropped. And it turned out in this 5-hour, 6-hour confession, there was about, I'm going to say, probably, I think I remember it being about 27 minutes missing. So I turned it back over to the attorney. I gave a full report of each time code edit, and they took it to court, and I believe they had turned it over. I didn't even appear in court on that one. That was a no-brainer. And they said, well, they tried to use the excuse. So in this particular, we had trouble with the camera that night. You know what? There was 2 interviews with witnesses done that, not a second missing.
Was anybody held accountable for tampering with evidence?
You know what? I don't go that far into it. Once I'm finished a case, I move on to my next one. So I don't really follow up. They'll do whatever they need to do with it. The attorneys are the ones that are taking it on, and they'll do what they need to do with it. But yeah, I'm sure there was something. I mean, there had to be something done. But the fact of the matter is that, and in fact, I actually have a manual I put out, which I actually have another website called convictedhub.com. That's HUB at the end, convictedhub.com, where I actually have you can download a 23-page manual, which I cover all this, everything, which I use for people that are in the post-conviction side, and they can just download the manual and look at their own cases and see if it's going to be necessary to bring in an expert. But it actually covers. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Now, obviously, this is going on in police departments and prosecutors' offices all over the country, right? So they're getting some kind of standardized training in this on how to manipulate witnesses and how to manipulate defendants into giving really bogus confessions. Now, who is providing this standardized training for law enforcement?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to. I don't want to say the name of the company.
Okay.
But there is, standardized training, and they have actually backed away from it in 2007. I think it was 2017, where they've moved away from that training. The issue is, though, it's not the training that they were getting; it's how they manipulate it. Because police culture is such that if you can see ways to get around certain things, you do that, and that's. Some do. I'm not saying this by no means to every officer. There's a lot of great officers out there. But there's certain ones that see opportunity and they start to push the boundaries and push the limits. And that's where the problem starts. Because then they start going, what was supposed to be a proper technique that's being used is now their version of the technique. And keep in mind, a lot of departments, they don't just go in and take whatever technique it is that they're trained in. They actually take it back to the department because of trademark issues in the technique or whatever, and they retrain their own men under their own version of what they've taken, and they convert it to their own department's needs. And so every place is, you could say, and I can see it almost similarly across when I'm doing all these cases. I see similar modus operandi in the way things are being done, and it's pretty, it's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty standardized across the board. There's a lot of areas, flags that go up all over the place. I mean, there's standardization, right?
Yeah.
So I see it all the time. So they can say that this isn't my technique. This isn't the such and such technique. This is our technique. But my attitude is, you can call a skunk a porcupine. It's still a skunk.
Well, now that we've identified the problem, though, what is the solution to change the police culture and misusing these techniques, or some kind of legislation to throw out these techniques? What's the solution?
Well, it's not about allowing or disallowing techniques. I think what has to happen, and I've seen some amazing. Quite honestly, I wish the government would call me more, because the fact is that there's a lot of great techniques or a lot of great interviews that were done out there that they are challenging. They shouldn't, because they were perfectly fine. There's a lot of good investigators out there. I think what needs to happen is, I think in a lot of cases, officers lose their way. The more they do that type of job for as long as they do, you got to remember the police culture, there's ego, there's all sorts of things that get into play. I think that if, like myself, I follow when I walk into it, I consider myself an analyst. I go in with absolutely zero stake in anything. I walk in, I'm only looking, I don't get emotionally attached. I look at evidence. I look at heinous cases. I don't pass judgment whatsoever. I look at them, I look at the evidence that's sitting there, and if I was the investigator on the other side, which I have been in many, many cases in my police career, I go further. I say, look, I'm not buying into this. And maybe it's true, but because there's flags going up, I need to look at corroborating evidence. I need to find that corroboration. Because if I go out and I do a complete investigation that is basically crossing my T's and dotting my I's, there wouldn't be these issues in the interrogation room, because the cake would have been baked already. The icing is just you'd be able to convict without the confession.
We've been talking to Brian Leslie, coerciveinterrogationexpert.com, and also check out convictedhub.com. Mr. Leslie, we got about 1 minute left. What do you want to leave us with?
Well, when you always listen to your attorney. If you get told to go in to have a conversation with a police agency, talk to your attorney. Because it may be innocent, it may just they want to have a conversation with you, but it may not be that way. You may not even see it coming. So the fact of the matter is that even though the urge to go in and give your side of a story is there, always check with your legal counsel. That's what they're there for. And the first thing they're going to say to you is don't go and talk. And that is, we deal with a lot of other cases other than, serious cases like I deal with. I mean, you've got domestics, you've got all sorts of issues that people just, their emotions get the best of them. They say things they shouldn't be saying in front of law enforcement. And these things are now used at the end of it. Mm. And that's why always talk to your attorney. Always talk to your attorney.
Brian Leslie, thank you so much. Coerced, what is that again? What's the name of the website again? Coerciveinterrogationexpert.com. Coerciveinterrogationexpert.com. Thank you so much. Good night. And now a word from our sponsors. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Operaman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at operamanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com. 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.